Okay, so let's unpack this. Today, we're doing a deep dive into Leviticus chapter 18. Our mission really is to understand the specific decrees, the laws, let us right here in this foundational ancient text. We want to explore the actual rules and, importantly, the reasons the text itself gives for them.
Right. And what's fascinating here is how this chapter gets going. The text presents these commands as coming, directly from the Lord to Moses for the Israelites.
Mm-hmm.
And it immediately draws this really sharp distinction. It sets up a contrast between the behavior required of them and what it says the people around them were doing.
Exactly. Yeah, the chapter kicks off with that core statement of authority, doesn't it? That identity, I'm the Lord your God. It kind of anchors everything that follows in that relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, well, flowing directly from that, the text issues a really clear prohibition. It says, you must not do as they do in Egypt, where you used to live, and you must not do as they do in the land of Canaan, where I am bringing you. Do not follow their practices. So it's framing these laws as like fundamentally different from where they came from and different from where they're headed.
So the central command then is really a call to live differently, isn't it? Based on this divine authority. The text says, you must obey my laws and be careful to follow my decrees.
Hmm.
And there's this powerful outcome attached. Keep my decrees and laws, for the man who obeys them will live by them.
And that raises, a really important question. What does the text actually mean by live by them?
Yeah.
Within the text's own world, its own context, it seems to connect obedience not just to, let's say, physical survival, but to flourishing,
Hmm.
to maintaining the right relationship with the divine, and crucially, staying in the land.
Okay.
The alternative, as the text portrays it anyway, is sort of a state of not living by these laws. And that carries, well, some pretty severe consequences according to the text.
And this is where it gets really interesting, I think. A huge chunk of this chapter is dedicated to spelling out very specific prohibited relationships and sexual acts.
Yeah, it is.
The general principle is stated pretty early on. No one is to approach any close relative to have sexual relations. I am the Lord.
And then this text just provides this very specific list, and you can see it emphasizes maintaining clear boundaries within family structures as the text defines them.
Right.
It covers a whole range of relationships. You've got immediate family, like mother or father's wife,
Uh-huh.
then siblings, including half-siblings.
Right, and it details relationships that span generations too, like granddaughters specifically called out as son's daughter or daughter's daughter, and the text says this would dishonor you.
Hmm.
It also extends out to aunts, identifying both the father's sister and the mother's sister as close relatives.
And the prohibitions keep going. They encompass in-law relationships, too.
Hmm.
Like the father's brother's wife, she's referred to as an aunt, and it's linked to dishonoring the father's brother. And the daughter-in-law, identified simply as the son's wife. The text also explicitly forbids relations with the brother's wife, stating it would dishonor the brother.
What's particularly striking is how the text groups certain relationships together, like a woman, her daughter, and her granddaughter. It explicitly says they are close relatives and calls the act wickedness.
Yeah, that's strong language.
It also includes that prohibition against taking a wife's sister as a rival wife, while the first wife is still living.
And then, moving beyond just kinship structures, the text addresses other sexual practices. It includes a prohibition about a woman's monthly period. It says, do not approach a woman to have sexual relations during the uncleanness of her monthly period.
Okay. And the text also includes that clear command about a neighbor's wife. Do not have sexual relations with your neighbor's wife and defile yourself with her.
So then the chapter kind of broadens its scope again. It moves to other actions the text deems forbidden, but it connects them back to that theme of defilement and opposition to the Lord. It states, do not give any of your children to be sacrificed to Molech. And it gives a specific reason. You must not profane the name of your God. The text links this act directly to dishonoring the divine name.
And it's worth noting, the text here doesn't really explain who Moloch is, but it frames child sacrifice as this profound profanation of God.
Exactly. Then, just reporting what the text states, it includes a prohibition on same-sex relations. Do not lie with a man as one lies with a woman. That is detestable. The text uses, well, very strong language there, calling the act detestable.
Okay.
And similarly, the text prohibits bestiality. It says, do not have sexual relations with an animal and defile yourself with it. A woman must not present herself to an animal to have sexual relations with it. That is a perversion.
Again, strong language.
Yeah, the text describes this as both defilement and a perversion, using language that clearly marks it as fundamentally against the order it's trying to establish.
So, okay, with all these specific rules laid out covering kinship, sexual practices, even these religious or social acts like the Molech,
Yeah.
sacrifice, the text then circles back. It comes back to the core reason and the consequences.
Right.
It states, do not defile yourselves in any of these ways, because this is how the nations that I am going to drive out before you became defiled.
Oh.
So the text presents this direct causal link, between doing these things and becoming defiled.
And what's incredibly powerful, I think, in the text's narrative is the consequence described for the land itself. The land.
Yeah, that's striking.
The text says even the land was defiled, so I punished it for its sin, and the land vomited out its inhabitants. I mean, that's such vivid imagery.
It really is.
It portrays the land as having this kind of purity or maybe an intolerance for these actions, reacting almost physically by expelling the people who practice them.
And the text is clear. This isn't just for like a select group. The requirement to avoid these detestable practices, as the text calls them, applies broadly to the whole community that's going to live in the land.
Yeah.
It says, but you must keep my decrees and my laws. The native-born and the aliens living among you must not do any of these detestable things, emphasizing that all residents, are bound by these laws according to the text.
And the text reiterates why the land was supposedly in that state before. It says, for all these things were done by the people who lived in the land before you, and the land became defiled. It's reinforcing that cause and effect.
Which leads directly to the warning, the consequence for the Israelites if they were to act in these ways. And if you defile the land, it will vomit you out as it vomited out the nations that were before you.
Wow. Same consequence. And then for individuals who engage in these practices, the text states another consequence. Such persons must be cut off from their people.
Cut off. What does that usually imply in this context?
Well, within the text's world, that phrase, cut off, can mean various things. Different forms of separation from the community. It could be ritual exclusion or potentially even more severe outcomes. But it signals a break, a separation from the covenant community.
Okay. And then the chapter wraps up by essentially echoing the initial command, right? Reinforcing the core message. Keep my requirements and do not follow any of the detestable customs that were practiced before you came, and do not defile yourselves with them. I am the Lord your God. Ends where it began almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So putting it all together, what does this all mean? In this deep dive into Leviticus 18, we've really seen the text lay out a clear set of very specific laws and decrees presented as divine commands.
Mm-hmm.
And they fundamentally contrast the required behavior of the Israelites with what the text describes as the practices of the surrounding cultures, Egypt and Canaan.
Yeah, we've definitely explored those detailed prohibitions.
Mhm.
We've seen how the text defines boundaries primarily around kinship and sexual relations, but also these other acts like child sacrifice. And it consistently links these actions to the concepts of defilement and detestability as defined within the text itself.
And, well, this chapter presents a really powerful picture. It's a world where personal actions, communal actions, they aren't just isolated events. They are deeply interconnected with the purity and even the physical state, the habitability of the land itself,
Yeah.
leading to these dramatic consequences like expulsion, according to the text's narrative.
Which really raises an important final thought for you, the listener. Based purely on how the text portrays it, what does that vivid imagery, the land becoming defiled and literally vomiting out its inhabitants? What does that reveal about the text's own perspective on the relationship between human behavior and the physical world itself? Something to ponder.